Winter Storm Fern arrived here in Oxford, Mississippi after dark. The freezing rain poured down, blazing every branch in beauty it couldn't survive. Then the breaking began. Sharp cracks in the distance, deep splitting booms, the heavy crashes of ice-laden limbs hitting the frozen ground again and again. It was impossible to sleep. Most of us lay awake waiting for the next one, not knowing how it would fall or where. By morning, the city looked like a tornado had passed through every street. The power was out and heat disappeared as temperatures dropped. Generators strained to keep power to the water pumps. Then running water disappeared too. Inside our bodies, something shifted. Our heart rates increased, our breathing shortened, our muscles tightened, and our attention sharpened. This is our stress response system, and it is built to answer one question: am I safe right now? When the answer is uncertain, it mobilizes. The amygdala signals threat. The HPA axis activates. Adrenaline rises and cortisol follows. Every system and function not needed for immediate survival in that moment shuts down. This is our stress response system, and it is conditioned to respond to our surroundings. That night, the conditions demanded a response. In the days and weeks that followed, even as the ice melted, as power lines were restored and recovery really began, something lingered. The bracing still remained. A loud crack still made me flinch. The ping of a weather alert on my phone still tightened my chest. My body hadn't fully received the memo that the danger had passed. This is how acute stress works. The system mobilizes, it protects, and when conditions allow, it resets. But here's where the story deepens. Our stress response system doesn't just react, it adapts. And adaptation can reach beneath behavior into biology. For a long time, we thought our genes were fixed, a static blueprint handed down to us at birth. But we now know that our genes are responsive. They don't change their sequence, but they do change their expression, and expression shifts depending on the environment. This is epigenetics, the study of how our environment affects which genes are turned on or turned off. One of the clearest examples of this comes from research on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. In the late 1990s, researchers began tracking the long-term health outcomes of individuals who had experienced chronic stress during childhood. Things like abuse, neglect, exposure to violence, and substance use in the home. What they found was striking. The higher the number of adverse experiences in childhood, the higher the likelihood of things like heart disease, autoimmune diseases, and disorders. Even mortality, decades later. These are not psychological effects, they are biological ones. Because while acute stress can be managed, chronic stress alters cortisol regulation. It increases baseline inflammation. It dysregulates immune function. It alters brain structure, and it changes gene expression, silencing those that would, under normal circumstances, protect our body from disease. The body learns from the environment. But childhood adversity is only one kind of storm. Others are economic or political. Some are woven quietly into housing patterns, into food access, healthcare availability, and educational opportunity. Some are simply chronic unpredictability, day after day, year after year. A child growing up not knowing whether comfort will come. An adult that lives in a body that rarely experiences safety. When daily life requires vigilance rather than rest, The stress response system learns from that environment, and vigilance becomes biology. A single storm can be survived, but climate can alter the landscape. And just like the ice accumulating on branches, the body bears the weight. This is sometimes called weathering, the cumulative biological impact of chronic stress. Over time, that wear shows up in patterns we recognize as health disparities: higher rates of heart disease, higher rates of preterm birth, higher rates of autoimmune conditions and diabetes, shorter life expectancy, not because some bodies are weaker, but because some environments are harsher. When we look at these outcomes, it's tempting to look for individual causes: diet, exercise, personal responsibility. But biology is not only personal. Biology is environmental. An environment is not built solely by policy and infrastructure. It is also relational. It is tone of voice. It is whether someone looks up when you enter a room. It is whether conflict ends in repair. It is whether consistency replaces chaos. Our biology is listening to all of it. And that means the story is not only about how harm happens, but what interrupts it. Because the same research that shows the impact of chronic stress also shows something hopeful. Support matters. In ACE's research, even one stable supportive relationship dramatically reduces long-term health risks. One steady presence, one predictable relationship, one nervous system helping another regulate. We saw this principle during the storm. Connections started close with immediate neighbors, sharing the warmth of gas fireplaces and buddy heaters, bringing chainsaws from driveway to clear fallen trees, carrying tools to shut off water mains before pipes could burst, running extension cords across yards to power what was necessary from those who had generators. And those small gestures began to organize. Community groups formed to pool supplies. Volunteers mapped needs and matched resources. Schools offered free meals, and warming shelters opened in municipal spaces. What began at the level of a neighbor spread across the town. And something else happened too. The bracing softened. Because when one system receives the signal, you are not alone, it recalibrates. Connection is physiological. Social support lowers cortisol. It dampens inflammation. It steadies the heart. This is what buffering looks like, and it can be transformative. The storm made something visible. Infrastructure doesn't always look like substations and power grids. Sometimes it takes the form of a neighbor. But we don't need a storm to build infrastructure, not that kind. We build it when the skies are clear. Through predictability. When someone follows through consistently, the body learns the future is not always a threat. Through co-regulation, eye contact, a steady tone of voice, a pause instead of escalation. Through repair, coming back after tension and restoring steadiness after disruption. When one nervous system settles, the other often follows. These things may seem small, but the nervous system does not measure impact by size. What begins between two people doesn't stay there. It scales outwards into communities, inwards into biology. The arc runs both directions, across time, across communities, and across generations. Storms will come, but we are not bystanders. We are shaped by our environments, but we shape them too. And this is why environment matters more than you think, because the environments that we choose to build today become the health of tomorrow. Thank you.